Hi, I'm Bonnie Holub from ArcLight Technologies. This is a brief demonstration from Amy Kinser's book, Your Microsoft Office Excel 2010 Comprehensive, copyright 2010 by Pearson and starting on page 614. In order to use the Excel solver, there are a few things that you need to know. First of all, it needs to be activated. It is an add-in tool, and so its update cycle is sometimes slightly different than that of Excel's, and it needs to be loaded and activated. Then, when you want to use the cell solver, you need to determine what is your objective or your target cell that you want to achieve. This is not unlike an objective cell that you would choose in a goal seek, but we'll see why solver is just a little bit different from goal seek in a minute. Anyhow, your objective cell must be a formula, and then you set it to minimum or maximum or to achieve a specific set value. The other thing you need to specify are your variables, which are your changing cells. All of these need to feed into your target cell, and that's your formula therefore needs to be some kind of culmination of them feeding into it. Finally, you establish constraints, and this is what really differentiates solver from goal seek. So let's see how it works from this example. Here is the Excel spreadsheet that comes with a book, and this is the solver page. So we see here that we have our spa scenario where you have a variety of clients, and the spa can be open a certain number of days, and you can have various therapists on duty. With a massage fee of $185, then this determines your gross revenue. Then you have fixed costs, which include utilities, equipment depreciation, and insurance that total to $1,877, and you have a massage therapist commission, which is 3% of gross sales, and you have supplies per client at $3.95 each. So you have a total of variable costs, a total of expenses, and then your net income, which is your gross revenue minus your total expenses. So let's go through and set up what we need to do for the solver. You can see that when I click on the Data tab of the ribbon, Data Analysis and Solver are available over here in the Analysis section. So here we have the solver parameters. First, we have to set the objective cell, and for this the objective cell is going to be D21. So we can click on it down here. And its net income, we want to maximize net income. We could choose minimum or we could specify a value, but we're going to choose maximize. Next, we need to say what cells are we going to change to achieve this. And we're going to change cells D4 to D6, and then I put in a semicolon, a comma, because I want to have another cell in the range that's not contiguous, and then I can click on C18. That's the other cell that I want to change to achieve this goal. So now I have to set up the constraints, and there's a number of them. I'm going to pause for just a minute while I type them in, and then I'll be back to explain them to you in detail. Okay, I've added 3 constraints, and let's review what they are. The spa is open daily from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., so that's 11 hours. So we have this constraint down here that says D5, the hours per day that the spa is open, is equal to 11. Then we have the fact that massages can last from 45 to 90 minutes, meaning that massage therapists can give anywhere from 7 to 14 massages per day. So this requirement is in 2 parts. It says that D4, the total clients per masseuse, is greater than or equal to 7, and D4 is also less than or equal to 14. Now I'm going to add in another constraint. So here we go with adding a constraint for D4. I'll add a new one, and this constraint for D4 says that it has to be an integer value, meaning that we can't have part of a client service. We have to service a total client. And also we're going to add a constraint in therapists on duty. We can't have half a person working, so we also have to have an integer constraint here. So let's look at all of our constraints at this point, and we see that we have these 2 added. D4 is an integer, and D6 must be an integer. Finally, we have one more constraint, and that is that we know we're going to work with 4 massage therapists. So we can add a new constraint, and this new constraint is that therapist on duty is going to be equal to 4. So I add that in, and if I had to change any of these, I could go ahead and I could click on the one I wanted to change, and I could say change it. It would get me back to those boxes. And I could say OK when it's done. So let's review that I have all the same constraints that are shown in the book. D4 is less than or equal to 14. D4 is an integer. D4 is greater than or equal to 7. D5 is 11. D6 is 4. And D6 is an integer. Now at this point, the book goes into a description on different kinds of solving methods. But a few pages in, it gives you a quick reference that says you can always start with the simplex method and it will tell you if it doesn't work. Now we happen to know this isn't going to work, and the reason is that we have some cells feeding into our total that multiply off one another. This massage therapist commission is a multiplication of the gross revenue to generate that, and so we know that that's not going to be linear, so simplex won't work, but I'll just run it to show you what it looks like when that happens. So it gives me an error. It says creating a linearity report to see where the problem is a problem. So you need to switch to the GRG engine to get that correct. So let's go back there and we'll say solver, and our constraints are still there. And we'll select the GRG nonlinear. Now when we do this, there's a couple other things that are suggested in the options by the author. First of all, the suggestion is to use automatic scaling, and secondly, to use multi-start. Multi-start helps us to ensure that we get the best possible solution and not just one that's probably the best solution. So when we say OK to those things, we can go ahead and say solve. And you can see that it's running down here. It's running through a number of different scenarios. OK, now it ran for about, I don't know, 10 seconds. And it ran, and we can see the solver results in here, where we figured out the total clients, the hours per day, therapists on duty, and figured out what would work for us in terms of commissions and things like that. Now, what we probably want to do at this point is say answer, and this will generate an answer report for us here. There are 4 main parts to this section of to this particular sheet. One is all the information on which solver was used and how we got to this total. One was the objective cell. This was what we tried to maximize, what our original value was and our final value. Our variable cells that we changed, and then our constraints. And at this point, you can see that I didn't get all the cells changed that I wanted to. Oh, yep, there's the other one, supplies per client. So these didn't have original values, but we could go back and check what the results are at this point. And then the constraints that were set up, and we can see how they were used. If we go back to Solver, we have it changed here. Everything has been changed. So one other good rule of thumb in using Solver is make a copy of your worksheet first and then work on that copy so you can have the original. Now there are ways, and the author goes on to show us how we can save Solver models and have our original data saved down here. But just a really prudent rule of thumb is save your spreadsheet, make a copy, and work on that. Okay, hope I see you in other videos. Thanks for watching.